Welcome to my sewing room. I am so happy today to have as my guest Joyce Drexler. Joyce is the co-managing partner of Sulky of America. Joyce has authored, I think, at least 14 books, and the title of her newest book is Dimensional Concepts in Sulky. Joyce, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be with you, Martha. I'm so excited.
I am so excited about these things you have brought. Joyce, I'm going to ask you to help me a little bit with these. This magnificent collar that isn't fabric at all. Tell me about this.
It's completely made out of thread that was created on a stabilizer by Sherry Dawn Roberts.
And then look at these magnificent designs down here on the bottom of the vest, and I have to show our viewers.
I know.
Look at the back. This fabric is not fabric at all. Well, it is fabric, but
you can't buy this fabric. You have to make it yourself.
Isn't that beautiful?
So save all those scraps of threads that you've been cutting off and throwing away.
Absolutely. All right, now there is a real secret to this vest.
Now this side's gorgeous, but Jeannie Sexton embellished the other side, and what a difference it makes.
Let me just share with you.
This is all free motion thread painting over printed fabric.
So she used the fabric on the back,
Mm-hmm.
thread painted over it, cut it out, and puffed it up with
a little bit of Pullen, and then quilted around it in a nice stipple-like action.
What a showstopper that
one is. Oh,
definitely.
She was in our challenge, so she did very well.
Oh, and look at this adorable vest. Joyce, tell me about this.
Bonnie Slinker created this one of a patchwork using her embroidered designs on the machine. And I just love how she added the little accents. Isn't that great?
It really, really is. And she just quilted it on the back. Now, Joyce, this is what I cannot believe.
Is this phenomenal or what?
It looks like leather on here.
It does look like
leather?
It is not leather. It is actually puffy foam that has been pressed to make faux leather. And you can stamp it while it's warm with stamps and get embossed looks as well.
This is, it says Africa Safari, and look at the different animals. So after it's pressed, it's simply stamped with those wonderful
You can stamp it, you can write in it
now.
with a pick if you want. You can do a lot of things.
Goodness.
Isn't that exciting?
Oh, it is just unbelievable.
Carol Ingram designed that one.
This is so cute too. Let me pull this out.
She also did
so we
this
can
one.
Look.
And as you can see, Martha,
you know what? I'm going to have to hold this one up a little bit.
This one has three-dimensional puffy embroideries on it. And that was created over the puff foam to give it the dimension that it has.
Look at this three-dimensional here with that wonderful, sunflower. And
so you really need to look at those embroidered designs you have on with your computerized machines and think of them in 3 dimensions now.
Because you can do this and cut them out, and isn't that just spectacular?
And that's really part of the technique we'll be showing.
All right, and then this lovely women's purple outfit with this beautiful collar in the back.
And this is also over the puffy foam to give it dimension.
You know, we sometimes call that padded satin stitch too.
Right.
It looks like, because you see now, Joyce, my satin stitch is not exactly wonderful, but I think my padded satin stitch with my embroidery machine will be a lot better.
Oh yeah,
now you have a
way.
couple of wonderful Christmas projects over here too, which I think we're doing Christmas year-round now since people are so busy.
And
now tell us a little bit about this.
This is actually the shadow work 3-dimensional puffy foam that we're going to be showing as the project today, and this is just a Christmas design.
And then the little pillow that says joy. And it really is puffy. It stands up.
It stands right up.
Well, it sounds to me like we have a lot of exciting things to share with our viewers today.
Oh, we do.
So now let's come on over and ask Joyce to share with us how to do the dimensional concepts in Sulky. I absolutely cannot wait for you to see the magic that Joyce has for you with her puffy foam. Joyce, show us all about it.
Well, I'm really happy about this because there's so many selected colors that you can choose from. And when I show these different techniques that you can do with it, you'll be amazed. It comes in 2 different widths, 2 millimeter and 3 millimeter. So for different projects, you will want to choose different thicknesses, but you also need to be aware that you can spray with temporary spray adhesive and put 2 layers together if you wish to make a thicker thickness, like 4 millimeter or 5 millimeter by putting a 2 and a 3 together. And generally you'll want to use the color that you're using for the actual thread coverage when you choose a color for it. Okay?
All right, let's see.
And then what I'd like to show you next is the different processes that you can do with it. This little applique project where you see the the limb of the branch of the tree, that's all satin stitching over Puffy. And what that does is allow that stem to have a really raised effect compared
it looks
to
like
the
a branch.
It looks like a real branch. So I'm just going to show you quickly how that works out to do that. So many people say, well, you can't see through that, Puffy. How do you get the design on there? And the way you do that is to take a tearaway or a water-soluble stabilizer and trace your pattern onto it. And then I spray the underneath with a temporary spray adhesive, and I'm able to then place the puffy foam in the area that I need. I spray the puffy then, and I'm able to put that onto the puffy foam, the actual design, and then you simply satin stitch over that with free motion or with the satin stitch foot. You will want to then tear that away and have that finished look when you're done. So
any sewing machine then can do
any
this.
sewing machine
It has
can
a
do
zigzag.
that. It has a zigzag, and what happens is you're perforating that puffy foam and it just tears away. It's specially made for the sewing machine, Martha.
Okay.
This is another aspect of using puffy foam. This is the
this is
faux leather that you love so much. And what I want to do is just show you quickly how you can actually do that by pressing the foam. And I'll just take a piece here. And what happens when we're usually using the foam for the applique processes.
Now, what kind of a press cloth? That's a Teflon?
This is a Teflon
okay,
press
okay.
cloth, and I have heated the iron to a high setting.
Okay.
And I'm simply going to quickly iron across this. Now, on the packages, it says it's flammable, but people have to know that it's not flammable when you iron like this. It's only flammable if they add dry cleaning solutions. So that means you cannot dry clean it. You can wash it. It's fine for that. And what this has done now has shrunk this down. It actually shrinks from the heat. And we found this out because when we were doing embroideries over puffy foam and we wanted to tear the puffy off and get rid of the little pokies, we found that if we steamed them real well, the pokies shrank in. So you can actually shrink your puffy foam, and while it's warm, you can take a stamp and stamp it and emboss it, or you can do what we have here with this wonderful little frame that we've done here.
I suppose you use this brown.
Use the brown, exactly.
Okay. Oh, that just looks like out of Africa, doesn't it?
They transformed it by ironing it, and then using a tool similar to this, they made little ridges in the area, and then used one of those painted pens to paint in the colors. And then she added some nice little buttons.
Cute.
Isn't that great?
Oh, that really is a designer frame. You could use a very inexpensive frame and make a designer frame out of that.
This is such a great gift for a man.
Yeah.
And Martha, you have another one over there that's a great present for any man.
I'll tell you, it's so hard to find handmade presents for men, and these are two fabulous ones.
And what we've done here is stamped some of the designs and embossed them and just made a very African-looking design with the stamps and with the paints.
Oh,
Isn't that wonderful?
It's really fabulous.
So there is fun things you can do for the man in your life. And I wanted to show you this other technique where you can actually take strips of the puffy foam. Now, you can cut this with a rotary cutter and mat and wheel and be able to get 1/8 of an inch strips. And what we like to do to be able to have this ride well under the foot is have a foot that is actually grooved out. This is like a cording foot, and it'll just ride right over that puffy strip. And in creating this three-dimensional trellis design, we used our decorative threads and decorative stitches to create the flowers and the leaves first, and then we just stitched over the water-soluble pattern to get the trellis effect by using these strips.
Just cut it out with a rotary cutter.
It's really,
That's
really
simple
fun.
enough. These are some adorable designs.
Now, when you look at your embroidery designs on your computer embroidery machine,
the computer ones,
I
which
just
a lot of
wanted to.
people-
I don't know if the camera will pick this up or not, but this one doesn't have any puffy under it. This has the 2mm puffy, and this one has the 3mm puffy. So you can really see the dimension changing. I know you can see it here. I hope they can see it too.
I can.
And what happens is when you're looking at your computer designs, you want to choose designs that do have a lot of satin stitching in them. You're going to find that that's the best raised area to have. Also, doing puffy under the words.
Oh, I love that.
And that's so much fun. And
Ho, ho,
I know
ho.
that there's a lot of satin elements in a lot of the designs you've designed, Martha.
Yeah.
But you can see how it raises it and gives it three-dimensional. This foam was originally created for the industrial market. And so when you are buying ready-made clothes that have puffy-looking designs on it, that's what's under the thread.
Oh.
And I really like that we now have it available for people on the market. They're able to actually get the colors that they need and stitch over it to make a nice satin-like stitch. And I just think all these designs really lend themselves to it. What you'll find though, as you do these, is sometimes you'll want to do the very last bit of the design with the puffy underneath. Okay. So the puffy is on top of the fabric, and then you just stitch right over it.
Those are so adorable. And all of these then are the built-in, from the built-in embroidery designs
From
and
embroidery
cassettes. Well,
right.
that is just, oh, Joyce, thank you so much. That is absolutely fascinating. And now Joyce has a beautiful home decorating project for you. This puffy foam shadow applique is so easy to do, especially if you have a can of KK 2000 non-toxic spray. Now let me show you. First of all, we're going to work with just the print fabric. I'm going to cut the oval out, then I'm going to put a little of this spray adhesive there, and I'm going to mash it back, and then I'm going to put a little more spray adhesive and go ahead and put a little more here and glue the batiste to the fabric. Now let me pull this print fabric off. You can see I cut that away. Then I'm going to use another stabilizer and do wing needle entredo or a pin stitch around it to make this nice little frame. Then I'm going to come in behind the flower I've just drawn, put my puffy foam, whatever color I want behind it, lower it, and using a wash-away basting thread in the top and a regular thread in the bobbin, I'm going to stitch around my design, and then I go back and cut away. Now then, after cutting away, I use regular thread, stitch around the design one more time, right on the top of the other stitching line I made, and then stitch around the outside and do that, and also putting the green behind for the stems, and then they're stippling. But by the way, before I did that final stitching, I used a soft and sheer permanent stabilizer, a cotton batting, and by the way, I glued all this together just by spraying. This little spray thing is wonderful. This is already sprayed together with the temporary adhesive and glued it all together so it holds it so nicely for my stitching. And now, Joyce, I'm going to let you show them exactly how this is done.
Okay, Martha, you did a great job. Well, the finished pillow really looks nice with the three-dimensional shadow applique. And like you said, you will use a template and actually cut away that center piece, leaving what I call a 1/2 inch border around it so that you can spray with the temporary spray adhesive to hold the actual seam allowance down, making a nice looking center piece. And then I spray the batiste and I place it on the back underneath so that you can see it. And then I take the wing needle and I would use like a lather stitch with the rayon 40 weight thread, the decorative thread, and go all the way around it. At that time, then I would decide what color I want to have my flower, and I would spray the puffy foam with the KK, and it will hold it and make it nice and flat as I'm doing the perforation with the wash-away basting thread. I need to take very short stitches because I need to be able to perforate that foam away and let
so it'll pull away
real easily, right. And at that point, then I would go and place the pillow pieces together, and I would want to layer, like you said, the different layers behind here. So I have the stabilizer supporting the thread as you're doing your stitching. And I just wanted to show a little bit of stipple quilting here.
How easy it is.
It is very, very easy. And at this point, I would have the regular needle in instead of the wing needle.
You just use a regular needle.
And I am again using that 40 weight rayon thread, making a beautiful stipple quilt design just by moving the fabric free motion. I've lowered the feed dogs so that I can move the fabric where I want to move it.
Now, Joyce, how much practice does it take for someone to get really good at stippling and find it to be really easy?
I don't think it takes very long at all because it's just a simple puzzle-like stitch. You know, you're making a puzzle-like ornamentation there as you go around. And I tell people it doesn't matter if you go over the lines or not. So many people think you can't do that, but you really can. And it really becomes very attractive. Now, once they have the stippling done, then they can actually construct the pillow. And what we did was we added a ruffle using a nice serged edge on the ruffle piece. And as you put right sides together, you end up sewing around until you have an opening like this so that you can stuff some polyfill in there.
Just stuff your polyfill in there.
That's
and
exactly
how washable
it.
now? How washable is all of this?
Oh, this is extremely washable.
Okay.
You'll have no problems with that. Just don't dry clean it because it's got puffy foam in. And like we said, it would be flammable with the dry cleaning solution. But you can press on it, you can do whatever you want with it. It's not going to burst into flames or anything while you're doing that.
Well, see, it looks like you spent hours doing shadow work embroidery, and actually all you did was just sew around it. And I really like that stippling finish too.
Thank you.
Next, I have a really beautiful doll dress. I think you'll know why we call this dress Frosted Ribbon Delight when you take a little bit closer look. Absolutely beautiful is my little doll named Martha. And as you can see, the gathered lace and entredos around the neckline. Then this is just simply ribbon that has been stitched down. Look at her pretty little ruffle that goes across the shoulder that has blue and pink feather stitching. Now, if you can look at this little ruffle, this is blue ribbon, satin ribbon that has been stitched down, and the lace is on top of it, and both of them have been stitched down with feather stitching. Now, down on the dress, you're going to see the blue feather stitching and the pink. And once again, the ribbon was sort of glued or basted onto the dress. Then the lace was put on top of the ribbon, and then blue feather stitching stitches down both sides. Pink feather stitching. Here, the purchased ribbon with no lace on top of it has blue feather stitching on either side to attach it to the organdy. Pink feather stitching, and then the ribbon with the lace on top of it has blue feather stitching on both sides, and then a flat piece of lace. Now let's see how easy it is to get that wonderful ribbon underneath lace effect. Here is what you do first. This is the lace that has been glued down with one of the washable glues. It has been glued together. Now this is the plain ribbon. We're not going to put it, the fancy ribbon. We're not going to put any lace on top of that. Now let me just show you how. When you're working with just one little narrow strip, you can use that wonderful spray-on adhesive if you've got a big strip, but just for a little tiny narrow strip, I think it's better to use a little glue like that, and you just come in there, and this just simply washes away, but now then it's all stuck together. Now to come around the corner, like on the front of that dress, I'm going to do a miter. First of all, I have traced off a 90-degree angle. I bring my lace down the edge. I put a pin at the bottom, a pin at the top. I fold it back on itself, simply lay it right there where this meets the bottom of the fabric. I remove the inside pin, stick it through 2 layers, and you are going to see a perfect miter has been folded in. Then I can straight stitch this down and then put stabilizer. I've used a paper stabilizer or a tearaway, any kind of a tearaway stabilizer underneath all of this, because now then I'm going to come over to the machine and sew. You will see that I'm going to do a feather stitch. Now the ribbon is down on the dress, the lace is on top of the ribbon, and I've got stabilizer underneath it, and I'm doing a feather stitch. And by the way, on this particular occasion, I'm using an open toe embroidery foot because I can see a little bit better exactly where that feather stitch is going, but you don't have to. You can use just a regular sewing foot. Now then, I'm coming down, and notice I have my ribbons that have been placed where they go underneath this little section that goes along the edge, and I'm going to do a feather stitch all the way down, and then when I cut to the very corner, of course, I'm going to simply pick it up and turn around and go back and do the feather stitch down the other side. Now I can go a little bit faster than I was going. My feather stitch is attaching the ribbon and the lace that has been just sort of glued down on top of that with a wash away glue. You see how easy that is to make this pretty little dress? Now I've got a final sample which is sewn in green thread, which you can see here. Now then, you can see I've used feather stitch to attach both the ribbon with the lace on top of it, a feather stitch in the middle just for decorative purposes. A feather stitch has been used to attach this pretty daisy lace that I did not put any lace on top of, feather stitch, and so on and so forth up. Now I've also used feather stitch on this edge to attach the flat lace, which you saw how we mitered that just a minute ago, and I attached the flat lace to the bottom, also using the feather stitch, which is one of my very, very most favorite of all the decorative sewing stitches. We love to make doll clothes, and you know, this is nothing new. Doll clothes were loved a long time ago and have always been one of the favorite items for women and their daughters and granddaughters to sew. Now won't you come along with me to my attic, where I have a perfectly beautiful antique garment to share with you. Since we have been enjoying the wonderful built-in embroidery on the embroidery machines, I think I have been even more attracted to beautiful antique clothes which have embroidery. This one is magnificent. This blouse starts with gathered edging at the top, insertion, some little hand crocheted insertion which goes down, and then some really interesting lace shaping. Well, it really isn't shaping, but I have some pieces that run horizontally and then a piece that comes down to a V in the front. And then all of this embroidery, the three little pieces here, this is all done by hand. Now, if you will look at how the lace is shaped around the bodice, and you see these little embroidered, well, they almost look like little ovals, little satin stitched ovals. Well, you can build those little ovals in nearly every one of the embroidery machines. Now, there are released tucks, and then this beautiful embroidery goes all the way down the front. Do you see how pretty that is? And oh, for goodness sakes, those of you that have one of the embroidery machines can do every bit of this in a very, very short length of time just by simply pressing buttons and using white on white thread. Now, the sleeves of this blouse are very, very interesting also. Let me hang this back up here and get this sleeve over to show you. There are pin tucks on either side of the sleeve. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The middle of the sleeve has two pieces of insertion, and then that handmade crocheted insertion in the middle. Now, the sleeve is very interesting. It has three pieces of French insertion, and then a little piece of gathered edging, and a little piece of gathered edging on either side of that center piece of insertion. I guess I just really love pin tucks, and I bet a lot of you do too. Now let me turn this blouse around. The back is magnificent also. It has the same treatment on the top, and then once again, these absolutely beautifully hand-embroidered flowers and satin stitch, and then those tiny little satin stitched ovals. And I just love released pin tucks, as you can see. Now, these pin tucks were put in with a straight stitch on a sewing machine, although all of the embroidery was done by hand. Now, I have a beautiful petticoat. You might think this was a skirt, but really it wasn't. They put as much time on their petticoats, I think, as they did their clothes back around 1900. This petticoat is quite unusual, though. It is attached row after row. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows of a beautiful edging. And then the next row is gathered just a tiny bit. You can't really see the gathers, but it's a little bit fuller. So you can see by the time it gets out to the bottom, really it's quite full because a little bit of extra edging has been put in both times. And it has a very simple top. I have for our Sewing from the Heart segment today a letter from Dione Thorpe. Dione lives in Fayetteville, Tennessee. Dear Martha, since moving to Fayetteville, Tennessee 2 years ago, I have started making baby quilts that are given to newborns in the premature unit of Huntsville Hospital. There are several of us that make teddy bears for the police and ambulances to carry to give to children who are hurt or traumatized. There is also a group of women from several Churches of Christ who make newborn gowns for the premature baby unit of the hospital. Sometimes the babies wear those gowns home, but sometimes they're buried in them. This is a wonderful work that many people should get involved in. It is certainly one that has given me a lot of pleasure and satisfaction. Sincerely yours, Dione Thorpe. Dione, I know since I talked to you personally when I was visiting up in Fayetteville, Tennessee, how much you and a lot of the ladies from a lot of the churches have really enjoyed doing this project. I want to thank you for doing that. And I want to thank all of you for joining me in my sewing room today, and I certainly invite you to come back next time.